Hello learners, welcome back to the course on learning and development in organization. We move to the third lecture of last module where we'll continue with our discussions in technology and learning and development. On a larger scale, on a larger canvas, we are looking into innovations in the field of learning and development. Today, we are looking into the second part of technology and learning and development. I'm Dr. Cyril Issac. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Business, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. Let's start with today's theme without any delay. We'll look into technology and learning and development. We have to understand that it's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with the problems more longer. So this is what Albert Einstein said, and this is what would be the running theme, because if we tend to understand the nitty-gritties, the nuances associated with the technology and learning and development, we'll be able to decipher and understand with more clarity what we have right now and what the future of learning and development in organization will look like. Let's start with the learning management systems in a more generic way. When we discuss the key tools and platforms in technology-enabled learning and development, LMS takes a central position. What is learning and management systems? Across the previous modules, we have elaborately discussed on that, but just to again revise, these are centralized platforms used by organizations to deliver, manage, track, and assess the training program. So some of the things which are relevant here are to deliver, manage, track, and assess the training programs. So when you look into the typical features of these learning management systems, you will understand that you will have course catalogs, that is internal or third-party content. You will have the automated enrollment and the completion tracking. You will have set of assessments and quizzes and certifications associated here. You will have learner dashboards and analytics. You'll have integration with HR systems, that is SAP, Oracle, etc. When you look into the examples, you'll have, many of you would have already worked in Moodle. You'll have the Talent MS, you have the SAP, you have SuccessFactors, you have the SIBO, Cornerstone on Demand. All these are typical examples of learning management system. What is the use in L&D? This is what is the critical question. If you ask me, I would say that it standardizes the training across larger workforce. It supports compliance and mandatory training, and it tracks ROI. It tracks ROI and the learning effectiveness part. This is what a typical learning management system facilitates. Now let's look into some of the e-mentoring platforms. When we discuss the key tools and platforms in technology enable learning and development, we should not forget e-mentoring platforms. E-mentoring platforms are simply the digital tools that facilitate structured mentoring relationship between employees, often asynchronously. So you see the features like mentor-mentee matching algorithms. You see features like goal setting and progress tracking. You see features like conversation logs and session scheduling, and even resource libraries and discussion prompts. So some of the typical examples of the e-mentoring platform is the MentorClick, the Kronos, Together, Guider. These are some of the typical examples you can venture into as per your needs. When you look into the use in learning and development, or the connect with learning and development, I would say that it enhances the leadership. It enhances the leadership. It promotes knowledge transfer. And it scales mentoring beyond physical or hierarchical limits. So these are the typical use in case of learning and development. Now let's look into something more interesting, which is VCOPs, or virtual communities of practice. Virtual communities of practice, for the people who don't know, its online environment or a set of aspects which create a conducive online environment where professionals with shared interests collaborate, they learn, and they solve problems informally. So you have typical features like thematic discussion boards. You have file and resource sharing possibilities associated with the virtual communities of practice. The virtual communities of practice also gives you the peer Q&A possibility, storytelling possibility, and reflective practice. It also gives you moderation by subject matter experts. So these are some of the typical features that are associated with the virtual communities of practice. Some of the typical examples are Yammer groups, Microsoft Teams, dedicated community platforms. So you might be using Microsoft Teams channel in case of as one of the virtual communities of practice in your workplace. When you look into the use in learning and development, I would say it encourages peer-to-peer learning. It encourages peer-to-peer learning. It typically supports innovation and collaborative thinking, and it builds a culture of continuous learning. This is what virtual communities of practice generally typically help for, or they do. Now let's look into some of the collaborative technologies. What are collaborative technologies? In simple terms, these are digital tools. These are digital tools that allow teams to work, to communicate, and learn together in real time or asynchronously. So it has certain features, right? Real-time messaging, video conferencing. It has task tracking. It has sharing, possibility for documents. It has a possibility for whiteboards, breakout rooms, and project channels. You have file and screen sharing for collaborative problem solving. So when you look into collaborative technologies, essentially you're looking into Microsoft Teams, you're looking into Slack, you're looking into Zoom, Google Meet, WebEx. Most of these tools we have all used. So we know what are they and what collaborative technologies are capable for. To sum it up, if you ask me the use or the connect in L&D, I would say it facilitates live learning. So case in point would be our live interactions. So we have already conducted few live interactions. So these are part of a collaborative technology. Group coaching possibilities are there. Peer learning possibilities are there. It enables team-based projects and simulations, and it integrates learning into daily workflows. Now let's quickly look into some of the social learning tools. When we look into the social learning tools, please understand these are platforms that promote informal, peer-driven learning through social interaction and content sharing. So you have some features like commenting, tagging, and liking learning content. You have the possibility of knowledge sharing via posts, videos, or blogs. You have a possibility of recognition through endorsements or badges. So what we see as an example nowadays is the LinkedIn learning, very popular. Facebook, Workplace, or Yammer, or internal enterprise social networks that every organization would be having. So these are some of the possible examples that we can think for social learning tools. Now what does it connect with L&D, or what is the typical lead towards L&D? I would say it supports continuous, just-in-time learning. It encourages user-generated content and grassroots knowledge sharing, and it fosters community, trust, and engagement in learning culture. And the learning culture. So typically, these are the positive side, or these are the aspects that are facilitated by social learning and social learning tools. Now let's look into the knowledge repositories that are there. Knowledge repositories are nothing but centralized digital libraries where organizations store and organize critical knowledge assets. So you have, some of the searchable archives of SOPs, the best practices, guides and case studies. You also have role-based access and version control. You'll also have integration with LMS or intranet systems. Typically, the examples that comes to our mind when we talk about the knowledge repositories are SharePoint, Google Drive, Confluence, Notion, etc. So typically, the use with L&D or the connect with L&D is that it ensures easy access. Easy access to institutional knowledge. It facilitates onboarding. It facilitates cross-training and just-in-time learning. And it supports organizational memory and continuity. So these are the typical aspects that connect knowledge repositories to L&D, or they can be used or found useful in L&D. Now let's look into a comparison between these typical platforms based on the core function and the strategic value in L&D. Very quickly, when you are looking into LMS, you see that the core function is to deliver and track formal training. Where the strategic value in learning and development lies with respect to LMS is that it is scalable and there is a possibility of structured learning. When we look into the platform or e-mentoring platforms or tools related to that, the core function is that it enables guided growth relationships, whereas the strategic value in learning and development would be talent development and talent retention. When we talk about the third aspect, which is virtual communities of practice, that is VCOPs, we are looking into peer-based collaboration and learning. So when we look into the strategic value in learning and development with respect to VCOPs, it is all about informal learning, it's all about innovation, it is all about expertise sharing. Other platforms that are available are the collaborative technologies, the possibilities related to that. You have real-time engagement and teamwork as a core function. So the strategic value in L&D would be active learning, live training, and problem solving. You look into the social learning tools, you have informal, socially driven content engagement, whereas the strategic value in L&D would be culture building, ongoing peer interaction. When you look into, finally, the knowledge repositories, what we discussed, the core function would be to store, to access, and to reuse organizational knowledge. But that said, the strategic value in learning and development would be retention of critical know-how, onboarding support, etc. Now, before concluding, we have to look into certain aspects, which includes the benefits of integrating technology into learning and development. So when you talk about technology, it has transformed learning and development into a more accessible, scalable, and responsive function. So it enables personalized, on-demand learning, encourages collaboration, and empowers organizations to respond to rapid change. So when we track the benefits of integrating technology into learning and development, ladies and gentlemen, please note the first and the foremost one would be accessibility and flexibility. So when you talk about accessibility and flexibility, digital learning platforms break geographical and time barriers. We have seen that. So whether employees are working remotely, they are working on the road or across global locations, they can access training materials on their laptops, tablets, or mobile phones, or whatever devices they have. So why this matters? It empowers the remote and hybrid workers. It encourages the self-paced learning. And if you ask me, it reduces the logistics cost, be it the travel, be it the venue booking, etc. Let's take an example to understand this in a more clear fashion. Let's say a field engineer can take a compliance module on a mobile app during travel instead of attending a physical workshop. See how much possible reduction is happening in terms of logistic cost. It is encouraging the self-paced learning as we discussed, and it empowers the hybrid workers specifically. The second important benefit that I want to list today is faster knowledge sharing. You look into the social media style tools, the internal forums, and the instant messaging apps. These all enable quick sharing of expertise. So typically, it is the go-to platform for most of the people to share knowledge, learn more, understand more, discuss more aspects. So it reduces the information silos, it promotes the cross-functional knowledge flow, and it captures the informal learning moments. I repeat, it reduces the information silos, it promotes the cross-functional knowledge flow, and it gains or captures the informal learning moments. So as an example, if I want to make you understand, let's take a case of a sales leader who shares, let's say, negotiation tips in a team channel after returning from a high stakes deal, immediately benefiting others. This would be a classic case of faster knowledge sharing possibility because of the integration of technology in learning and development. The third significant benefit of integrating technology into learning and development would be embedded learning in workflow. Technologies like micro-learning apps, digital checklists, or let's say performance support tools, they deliver content at the point of need. So what does it give us? It reinforces the training in real time. It increases the retention by contextualizing the learning possibilities, and not to forget, it reduces the interruption to productivity. So let's take an example here. Let's say a customer service representative gets a 2-minute refresher video on handling complaints before taking calls each morning. That would be quite refreshing, and that would be the instant benefit that the person is getting because of the provision of the technology and the availability of the technology at his disposal or her disposal. Now, let's look into some other critical benefits of integrating technology into learning and development. The fourth one would be the data-driven insights. We talk about the modern L&D platforms. They offer learning analytics that provide visibility into how training is consumed and whether it's making an impact. So let's look into the key metrics. You might have seen the metrics like engagement rates, you might have seen the metrics like course completion or dropout rates. So when you're talking about the engagement rates, typically you are looking into the logins, the video views, etc. Course completion and dropout rates typically are also critical key metrics. You also would have seen the skill acquisition. Skill acquisition or progress of that, or you would have also observed the ROI through business performance data. So what is typically the outcome? The outcome is that the data helps L&D teams make evidence-based decisions, personalize content, and justify the training investments. When you talk about the benefits of integrating technology in learning and development with respect to data-driven insights, I can think of an example of an HR team that uses dashboards to identify that completion of leadership courses correlates with, let's say, internal promotion rates. So typically, that would be the data-driven insights that would help the real-time understanding of the whole process or the situation. The fifth important benefit of integrating technology into learning and development would be enhanced collaboration. So here I will recall the VCOPs, virtual communities of practice, or let's say some collaborative platforms. or peer feedback tools that encourage the collective learning. What are the benefit? It encourages diverse viewpoints and team learning. If you think critically, it facilitates mentoring, it facilitates coaching and support networks. It strengthens culture of learning and sharing. So let's take an example to understand this. A product design team, let's say, uses Slack to collaborate on a learning module about, let's say, customer-centric innovation, exchanging resources in real time, can be a critical case of enhanced collaboration. Now let's quickly look into challenges and risk in tech-based or tech-enabled learning and development. So we have done a clear analysis of different possibilities, different platforms. We have looked into the benefits part. Now we looked into the challenges and risk in tech-enabled learning and development. So please note, when we talk about the challenge, we always have the over-reliance on systems. We talk about the over-reliance, it is all about the risk of ignoring something which is very critical, that is a tacit knowledge. We ignore the instincts, we ignore the informal practices that come with human experience. So over-reliance on systems typically lead us to do all these things, which would be fatal and which would be detrimental for the organization. There could be also cases of digital fatigue. When you look into excessive screen exposure, that may lead to reduced attention. It may lead to reduced engagement and even burnout in extreme cases. You'll also have issues of privacy and data ethics. You talk about collecting learner data, it raises issues of consent. It raises issues of confidentiality. It raises issues regarding the ethical use of that. There could be tech learning mismatch, investing in tools that don't match learning needs and can result in low usage and wasted resources. You also have a possibility of lack of digital readiness. So some learners or L&D professionals may lack digital fluency, reducing the effectiveness of tech solutions. So these are some of the critical challenges and risks that are associated with respect to the tech-enabled learning and development. To summarize, I would like to discuss on some of the strategic implications for the HRD professionals. We start with diagnosing the learning needs. When we talk about diagnosing the learning needs, it's all about identifying which gaps can be addressed through digital solutions. Align the tech with business strategy. Align the tech with the business strategy. This is the way to go forward. You look into designing blended learning solutions. So you combine formal courses, experiential learning, and social learning. You leverage tools like LMS, micro-learning apps, and virtual sessions with respect to designing blended learning solutions. You look into evaluating effectiveness. You understand the use of analytics to assess content relevance and learner progress. You conduct regular audits of tech platforms and learner feedback. With respect to driving digital transformation, you partner with IT and leadership to support enterprise digital skills. You lead upskilling and reskilling initiatives aligned with future roles. And finally, there is a possibility of facilitating virtual learning ecosystem. So you support coaching, you support mentoring and peer learning through digital tools, build and moderate the VCOPs that we have discussed, or the possible expert networks. So what we understand with respect to these strategic implications are, when you try to bring technology closer to learning and development, over the last 2 sessions we have seen this, that there can be some inertia. There can be some resistance for the people who are directly involved. They might not be able to take it up and do what is required in a real-time basis, or there might be an inherent delay. This might be detrimental for the organization. So you have to understand, you have to analyze the right people who are tech savvy, who are more prone towards adapting and adopting technology and acclimatizing with what is going on in respect to their field or their domain. So that selection process will enable that people are chosen for the right post, and these are the right people. So when you look into technology and learning and development, we have seen categorically different possibilities, different tools, different platforms. We have also seen the practical implications specific to some of the different organizations. Some very good organizations which typically have, mentioned or have taken learning and development to the next level. So when you are looking into learning and development and the merger of technology, please understand there are still, a lot of, ways or lot of, miles to be covered. But at this juncture, learning and development is totally controlled by technology, and in the possible future, that is what it is going to happen. So when you are looking into technology and the integration of that with learning and development, you have to be mindful about the challenges. You have to be mindful about the barriers. You have to be mindful about all the possible distortions that we have discussed. But that said, when you are mindful of that, you get a lot of benefits. And I totally believe that those benefits critically outweigh the challenges. And that is the beauty of bringing in technology in the realm of learning and development. Thank you for listening to me patiently. We'll come up with more details of learning and development in the concluding 2 lectures. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.